All right, my friends, we are back with Creativity is the Cure. It is my great pleasure to welcome my good friend, Jonathan Firehawk Duplessis.
Thank you so much, Malcolm, for having me.
So good to talk to you. You're like the busiest guy in show business. You're pretty hard to track down.
That's very interesting.
All right, on that note, we've got to tell everybody how we met. And I don't know if your memory is the same as mine, but I remember I was teaching a kindergarten class, and you were an IA, or as they call teacher's aide, and you came in with the class, and we started doing that, and then you noticed I had a Kate Bush book on my desk. Yeah, definitely some kind of synchronicity. And speaking of that, there's so many times where we get a hold of each other, mostly by text, and we're reading the same thing or thinking the same thing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Between the Kate Bush / magazine, which you gave me, and discovering Thomas Merton's Seeds.
Oh, what a good book.
Those two, I mean, your spirits, it was so... You were so present, man. There was something about you. You emanate this incredible light, this perennial light, and it was instantaneous, man.
Yeah.
You know, the connection.
I totally agree. And a lot of times when I do these podcasts, I try to think of three things that I appreciate about people. And I wrote down traveler, activist, artist, but then I started coming up with so many other words that I thought of a quote by one of our favorite writers, Alan Watts.
Yes.
He once said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth."
Wow.
I think that goes for you more than anybody I know.
Oh, bless you. Wow. Wow. That's really moving. Wow.
Yeah. Tell me about your full name, though. Where does the Firehawk come from? Is that your middle name? Is that...
No. Firehawk comes from my cousin Richard, who was I never met him. He died in the early 90s. Oh. But he was a mystic and a poet and an incredible writer and a channeler. And he was a businessman first, had his awakening, and then, walked his fiery path. And he took on the name Richard Firehawk Stang.
Yeah.
And when I was staying with my cousin, his spirit came to me and anointed me in some way with that. It felt right.
Yeah.
Duplessis is my father's last name.
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It sounds like you're taking the torch and continuing the spirit.
I hope so. I feel, something like that.
By the way, we're both in interesting places today, locations. I'm out in the desert because my wife, Christine, and I just moved out here. And if you hear a little bit of wind, where are you today, Jonathan?
I am in the gorgeous arena of Lake Tahoe.
Wow.
I've never been here before. And
what's it like?
Well, there are a lot of pine trees, glorious pine trees. The lake itself is this massive, turquoise, divine color I've never seen before. And, speaking of the wind, I think you just called on Brother Wind. It's it's like 72 degrees out here. It's Los Angeles weather. It's gorgeous. Good people, good land. And what part of the desert are you in again?
We just moved to Palmdale. Yeah, it's right next to Lancaster. It's really beautiful. About 90% of the people that live here work in Los Angeles. But, we got, as much as I love working in Los Angeles, needed a little bit of peace and quiet. I needed a home without a helicopter over me every night.
That's real.
And as much as me, I'm an extrovert. I've got 800 students at school. I love it. I love being in the eye of the storm, but I'm finding as I get older at night, it's good to just get some solitude.
That makes my heart happy to hear that, man.
Can't wait to have you guys out here. The main gist, the crux of this podcast, it's called Creativity is the Cure, because a couple of years ago, I was facing a lot of challenges, and then I finally solved them, and I said, wait a second. I use the same part of my brain that I do when I play drums. I started as a jazz drummer. If I play a solo, you just get into the stream of consciousness, this improvisation, and I realized that I use the same part of my brain. I was starting to be creative. I started to think of different ways to solve it, and then I just thought, this is so important. I bet everybody does this.
Well, that's beautiful. I have to tell you that I profoundly agree. But on a personal note, if I may share this with you, I haven't really shared it with many people, but I sat with the mother ayahuasca this past March, if you recall.
Yep.
And I was shown in, one of my ceremonies. I hadn't asked for it, but it came up, and it was a past life. And it was my most recent past life, the one right before this one. So we're talking 1930s, 1940s.
All right. We had a conversation about this. Go on.
Yes. And I witnessed myself in a very dehumanizing and horrendous environment, and I survived it, and I was shown that the way I survived it in that life and in this one is my creativity. My creativity is what has saved me over and over again. So without getting too specific, I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, that's beautiful, and we'll get there. But before we do that, let's go way back in time, my friend. What is your first memory of using creativity? It could be anything. It could be you're a child drawing a picture, listening to music. What was the first time you realized, wow, there's a very interesting part of my brain that is allowing me to color outside the lines?
That's a great question. I have to say the earliest tangible memory is listening to the Spice Girls in 1998.
Wait. I did not see that coming. I got to hear this one.
I remember having a cassette tape, or maybe borrowing a cassette tape from my sister. And it was their first album. And I remember going in my little backyard where I was in South Central Los Angeles and putting on the headphones and listening to a song called If You Can't Dance by the Spice Girls. And something clicked.
Yeah.
And it was one of those indelible kind of moments. It's odd, but it's mine.
Tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
Yeah. That's right.
Wow, that's really cool. Tell me about your parents. Are they still with us?
Yeah.
Are they creative, and do you think their creative identity was passed on to you at all genetically, or maybe from the environment you grew up in?
No. Neither of them are particularly creative people. I didn't grow up with my father. I know him now, but it was mostly my mother and I and my sister. But I think that the answer to that is more rooted in, for me, I found freedom through expression, because I came from a family that did not know how to express themselves, did not know how to communicate, did not know how to be there.
Yeah.
And I think my reaction was to completely go against that. When I found this image in a book of James Dean in a still from the movie East of Eden, I connected to that look on his face without knowing anything about this man or this film. And it was the longing that he was communicating that pulled me into the world of acting and cinema.
Yeah. Well, that actually leads to our next question. You are a true artist. Visual, musical, wordsmith. You almost remind me of a modern-day William Blake, who was an artist, poet who lived, if people don't know, 1757 to 1827. I think people are just starting to understand what a genius he was. With that in mind, tell me more and tell the listeners more about your artistic and creative side of your life. What are some of the ways that you express yourself?
Wow.
And you just sent me your short film, so maybe we should start with that.
Oh, yes. Well, the visual medium is something that I've just recently started to tap into. I sent you a second part film of a two-part series, both 4 minutes. But if I go back even further outside of theater and playwriting, music, poetry, I mean, these are all part of the kaleidoscope of my particular expression, and a lot of it is rooted in the intangible, the invisible, the mystic, the unknown, as well as the social and the political. I have always seen them as, inextricably linked, and they all feed the other and inform the other. And so, I tend to use a lot of experimental forces within my work. A lot of it is abstract, and I guess you can call it avant-garde. But it's all deeply personal. Deeply tied to my experience in this world and another world.
You truly have one foot in the clouds and one foot on the ground at all times.
Bless you.
And I especially liked how I don't know what effect you used to change the voice in the video. And a lot of times people do that as a gimmick, but you really did it well. And you and I, we both love Prince. And the timbre you put on the voice made me think of, Mommy, why does everybody have a bomb?
Yes. Oh, only you would pick up on that. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Oh.
And I love your films because I watched them quite a few times now. And every time I watch, I catch something different. So if people want to see these, they're on YouTube, right?
Yes, started a little YouTube channel a couple of months ago. It's under Red River Rituals. Yeah,
highly recommended.
Well,
speaking of that and Prince and stuff like that, who's the most creative musical artist that you've been enjoying listening to and why?
Recently or in general?
You could pick anybody. I know that you and I like so much stuff, so why don't you pick one to share about?
Wow, another great question. Immediately what jumps to mind, or who jumps to mind rather, is D'Angelo.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I haven't heard about him in a while. Incredible artist. Why do you like him?
Yes. Well, one, he's a disciple of Prince.
Yep.
I think he would even say that. I mean, D'Angelo, his voice, his sensitivity, his vision, his scope, his artistry, what he communicates is something that, is very, very dear to me. He's an artist who I completely find myself getting lost, in a particular world, a particular vibration that he has created. The way in which he's able to communicate messages from the divine, into his piano, into his, there's no one like him.
Yeah, there's two things I have to say about him. Number one, he's not prolific. And I that I love Peter Gabriel. They both have that in common. They're not very prolific, but boy, when they drop an album, it's so deep and so wide, and it just means a lot. And you can tell why they're perfectionists, and they really want to be careful before they put anything out. And then the other thing, I'm a drummer, and I remember when D'Angelo came out, I was listening to the drums, and I was like, what is going on? Because
Voodoo or Brown Sugar?
What was the first one? Was it Voodoo?
The first album was Brown Sugar.
Yeah, Brown Sugar. When it came out, the drums were, if you're a drummer, in most cases, you're on the beat, you're behind the beat, or you're ahead of the beat. But this guy, he had a feel that was like no other. And as a drummer, I've noticed how much his drumming style has affected the drumming community. And it actually took me a while to quite understand what was happening. It's almost like freestyle rapping that's not exactly on the beat. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
it's floating.
Absolutely. I'm thinking of tracks like Chicken Grease, and The Roots off of the Voodoo album, and Questlove, right?
Questlove. Man, Questlove. And it's interesting because in most cases, Questlove plays like a drum machine. I mean, he's like a cyborg, but in this case, he was copping a whole new style.
I'm trying to remember the term that D'Angelo gave Questlove for the drums. I think it was like this drunken Shaolin type of, but it was really beautiful what he described. And of course it was so unnatural to him. Yeah.
Any drummers out there, you got to check out D'Angelo.
Yeah. Yes.
How about, what's the most creative film, TV show, or book that you are enjoying lately, and why?
Wow.
You and I mostly text each other, and in the text, we're probably each recommending 10 different things.
This is true. I have to go through the Rolodex here. Wow. Okay. Well, I would say film-wise, I've been coming back to My Own Private Idaho lately.
I haven't seen that since it came out, and my son just gave me a Blu-ray of it that I can't wait to rewatch.
Word. Okay. Wow.
See, there it is again, right?
The synchronicity. Yeah.
I think I remember Flea's in that too, right?
Yeah, Flea's in that. Correct. Good old Flea. My Own Private Idaho, River Phoenix.
Yeah, man.
He was amazing. One of my early. Yeah. You know, again, talk about another totally original, creative, cosmic being who came out of nowhere, you know, and just gifted us with so many incredible, you know, works of art on celluloid.
And despite a very challenging upbringing.
Incredibly challenging. I mean, a lot of people feel that his performance in that film is, you know, probably his greatest, and I would agree. I love Running on Empty as well. Oh, but,
I love that.
Yeah, that's an incredible film. But the layers, you know, of My Own Private Idaho, the poignancy, you know, the incredibly, I mean, the pain, you know, it's a gut wrenching film, and it's incredibly poetic. Well, I keep using the word incredibly a lot.
That's okay. We're talking about big stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also having this conversation with you, you know, being, you know, one of my closest friends and spiritual brothers. In the environment I am in, on, you know, with the journey I've been on. It's River Phoenix, man. And
is the director Gus Van Sant?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Gus Van Sant. Drugstore Cowboy.
Oh man, I forgot about that. You know, we love William Burroughs too.
Yes, Burroughs is another, you know, great talent. Very, yeah.
We're like we're the tangent kings. I'm trying to hold back so much. I mean, I also wanted to tell you, people don't know that I'm a middle school teacher. I'm about to teach my students about the cut-up method this week. So I bought some magnets, and I want to show them how this technique of writing influenced David Bowie, Beck, all kinds of people. And if you don't know what that is, yeah, I think it was William Burroughs, John Giorno. I know there's one more.
Byron Gysin.
Yeah, and Allen Ginsberg. Yeah, if you don't know, what these guys did is they were poets and writers back in the 50s and 60s, and books like Naked Lunch that William Burroughs wrote, what they would do is write all their feelings on a piece of paper, cut it up, and then rearrange it. And then I remember William Burroughs would say, now let's see what it really says.
Yeah.
And then when David Bowie and Brian Eno in the 90s reconvened, they did the Outside album. But this time, David Bowie had a computer program that would shuffle the words.
That's right. Oh, incredible stuff.
Yeah, and and then before we move on, River Phoenix, man, one of my favorite books was turned into a movie. If you haven't seen it, it did bomb, but I disagree. It's such a good movie. It's called The Mosquito Coast with Harrison Ford. Yeah, astounding movie.
You know, I've never seen it.
Oh, it's such a good one. I mean, the book's great too, but I really loved the movie, especially River Phoenix's performance. Peter Weir directed. Right? Oh, did he? Yeah, I didn't know that.
I think it's Peter Weir, but I should watch it. It sounds like.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're gonna do this again soon. So.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm gonna watch My Private Idaho. You watch Mosquito Coast.
I'll watch the Mosquito Coast. Okay, that's a deal.
I'm gonna ask you a personal question. You're allowed to say no on this, but before I go there, let it be known. I think we know this about each other. We view animals as importantly as people, and certain points maybe more introspective and powerful. I've had a lot of animals in my life. It's excruciating when I lose them. So I wanted to ask you to tell me about your beloved dog that you recently lost. What was your relationship like? And then maybe a lighter thing, can they be creative?
Can they be creative?
Can animals be creative? So tell us about your dog, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind. Wow, these are such interesting questions. My dog, Whiskey, was his name. He was a Beagle Jack Russell, and I got him when I was about 20, my ex-wife and I at the time. And he was the first dog I ever had. And
how old did he live to?
He was about 15 and a half.
That's pretty good for a dog.
Yeah. He was, I grew up with him, you know. He moved with me from state to state, and he was incredible. He was as what Carlos Santana would call, in talking about Miles Davis, Whiskey was a divine rascal, you know. He was able to get away with things not other dogs couldn't get away with. He was a diva, and an incredibly, yes, I would say, creative and communicative, expressive dog who preferred the company of humans far more than other dogs, you know.
That's funny because I have a friend, drummer Steve Gadd, and one time he said, you know, Malcolm, sometimes I'd rather be with a dog than a person.
Amen to that.
It goes both ways.
Indeed.
Tell me more, though. I mean, what's an example of him being creative? Maybe he did something that surprised you.
All the time. He was a incredibly mischievous dog. Just the way that he would interact with people. I'll give you a great example. There was a time where I got married, and I left for 6 months, and I ended up traveling in India and living there in a way. And we had to leave our dog with my cousin, and so we left the dog there, and we came back 6 or 7 months later. And of course, they had grown accustomed to having Whiskey in their lives.
Yeah.
And so we stayed there for about 2 nights with them in Idaho after getting back to the States. And the first night, Whiskey stayed with us in our room, you know, a reunion. And the second night, Whiskey instinctively knew that he wouldn't be seeing them again. And so he instinctively, creatively perhaps, climbed into bed with them, and they cried with him, and he consoled them all night. Yeah. And, you know, that's a precious thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes beyond. We all know that if you have a cat or a dog or some kind of sentient being like that with you, if there's going to be an earthquake, they know way ahead of time. But I think it's, like you're saying, it's way more than that. I think even though they're living in the present, especially dogs, I feel like they're aware of things about to occur.
They're tapped in. They are tapped in. There's no doubt about it. You know, the love that they emanate, where else is that coming from, you know, but source?
Yeah, true. I have a really big question for you. This, and it's going to take a minute for me to read this, but stay with me on this. One of my favorite bands is The Police, and one of the non-hit tracks is called Secret Journey. This one always makes me think of you. So here's some of the lyrics. Upon a secret journey, I met a holy man. His blindness was his wisdom. I'm such a lonely man. And as the world was turning, it rolled itself in pain. This does not seem to touch you. He pointed to the rain. You will see light in the darkness. You will make some sense of this. And when you've made your secret journey, you will find this love you miss. So according to Sting, who wrote this, the lyrical inspiration for Secret Journey was the 1963 novel Meetings with Remarkable Men, written by George Gurdjieff, who you and I've talked about many times. Sting said the following about this song. It's a quasi-mystical song. You have to do something, go somewhere to get outside of yourself. Meetings with Remarkable Men says you have to make a journey. It doesn't have to be a real journey. It could be a mental journey. So with this in mind, tell me about your secret journey, your spiritual journey, recently to Peru, which you accomplished in the physical realm.
Wow.
I told you it was a big one.
You're making me sweat here, Malcolm. Wow. I'm taking that in still.
Think about it.
And metabolizing that as we speak. And also, thank you for sharing that. That hit hard. Yeah. It means a lot.
When did you go to Peru? It was a little while ago, right?
It was in March of this year, 2024, yes.
Well, you know what? You and I tried to get together and do this so many times, and it just wouldn't happen. And I think that you needed time to process Peru.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I would agree. To attempt to answer that question, I would say that trip, first of all, I was able to sit with the Shipibo Nation through the help of another spiritual brother and great friend, Nico Carter, who has been doing work with them for years. And so the trip was really a culmination of a 5-year dark night of the soul. Slash
another good book,
spiritual awakening slash stepping into one's liberation. Yes, I met you shortly after my journey really began in 2019.
Right.
My awakening and subsequent dark night of the soul. And there, as we all experience on this red road we're on, the trajectory is wild. It's up and down. I went through a period of spiritual escapism, of being so caught up in this invisible world that was much more pleasant to be in than this one. Everything changes. It's a metamorphosis that is indescribable. But your cells change, your heart changes, your consciousness changes, and it's painful. It's dirty, it's ugly, it's brutal.
Yeah.
But it's also vital and necessary, inconceivable for me to think of any other way out but through. And so sitting with Mama Ayahuasca and sitting with that medicine with my partner as well, who accompanied me. This is in Peru in Pulcaupa. Yeah. So how can I put this? I was able to retrieve a part of my spirit that had been imprisoned by deep trauma.
Yeah.
And I was also able to, as we hinted at earlier, I was also able to glimpse this life in, a concentration camp.
Right.
And being a musician, I was able to survive playing with the Auschwitz Orchestra.
Wow.
And it's no coincidence that the first play that I ever wrote at 15 was based on Viktor Frankl's books, Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh, God, I read those books when I was in my 20s. Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome. Yeah. So creativity, brother. Creativity. It's everything. Existence itself, that is creativity. It is a creative expression. The act of creation is...
I was just thinking, let's not we forget the creator.
Yes.
It wasn't until you that dawned on me. Wow.
Damn.
And then for people out there that don't know, Dark Night of the Soul is this beautiful book of a journey, and actually it was written by a 14th century monk, but nobody knows who it was that wrote it. But the material's still out there, which is amazing. Yeah.
I hope I did some justice in that explanation.
No, I think you did great. I think the next question is very related. Do you think creativity needs to be implemented in supporting people with mental health struggles like depression, anxiety? Any specific insight?
Wow. These are heavy hitters. You aren't...
That's all we ever talk about.
Right. Even when we're being light, there's still this kind of weight to it. The unbearable lightness of being.
Yeah. Another.
Great.
I read that when I was 14. Thank you. I got to reread that too.
Same. Okay. So to jump back, I think that creativity absolutely needs to be implemented in educational environments and schools of all kinds.
Yeah, and actually when we met, you said you wanted to work in prisons, so that would be another area, right?
That's right. Wow, you remember that. Wow, that takes me back. Well, I didn't end up working in the prison, teaching theater in the prison, my political theater curriculum. But yeah, I've seen, I mean, just for the record, so people know, I do not teach anymore. I taught for 8 years, and that was wonderful. But it was also, as you know, a battle at times with the institutions and the bureaucracy. And, you know, you do what you can. And again, my hat I always tip my hat to you and bow to you that you, you know, have been able to exist within these environments. I mean, the kids fuel you, and you're so fucking amazing.
Thank
when
you.
It comes to, you know, having that divine connection to your students. You're one of the greatest teachers I've ever seen in action.
That means a lot. I always think to myself, you have to be a little bit mental to be a teacher. So that's making me feel better.
It's good fuel, man. You've got, you know, your energy powers, you know, the class, the kids. And it's just like, it's like watching great jazz musicians, you know, go back and forth.
I love that.
That language is incredible. Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to have even more fun in school tomorrow.
It's a very serious issue. And it's, I mean, again, Orson Welles said it best in the early 1960s. We don't have a national theater in this country, in the United States.
Right.
We have always sorely, you know, lacked funds and appreciation for the arts. I mean, all of the arts, you know, beyond the mainstream stuff, which is fine. It has its place, and it, you know, but I don't really think this is a very different. I mean, this is becoming so. This is a very personal question too. I mean, like it makes me very emotional.
Yeah.
And there is a bit of anger that I can feel in my body rising up just thinking about the lack of creativity.
Well, listen, I mean, I always say there's nothing wrong with being angry. It's how you just decide to execute your feelings on that. I mean, John Lydon, right? Anger is an energy.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And you're making me think, so much of my educational life has been working with special needs kids. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about people not supporting the educational system as well as they should, here's an example most people don't know. Before holiday breaks come up at school, you will see a rise in behavioral issues. Extreme ones. And a lot of these kids who come from homes where they're neglected, they are going to act up and go way over the top and do dangerous things because they don't want to leave school, because they don't get attention when they're home. And it's making me think of one of the most extreme ones I ever saw. My friend Jack and I were at school once. Jack's a really dear friend. We were at school once.
I miss him.
Yeah. I'll tell him you say hello.
Please do.
We came outside because we heard there was a kid in distress, and he was on the roof of the school.
Oh my goodness.
And you know, it's upsetting, and some people were angry, but I thought to myself, what is one way to get every single person at the school to pay attention to you? This kid was brilliant, you know?
Yes.
I'm going to get on the roof. Everyone's going to be concerned. I'm going to get the kids. I'm going to get the staff, the adults. I might even get the police to come. And I think our country doesn't quite understand how important the educational system is, because let's be honest, a lot of these kids are with us more than they're with the parents.
Correct. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, and wow, this also makes me think of in the time I did teach, how parents look to, and you know, colleagues as well as myself, how they looked to us as psychologists, mentors, teachers. I mean, you know, priests in some cases.
How about parents?
Incredibly, yeah. It was a very precarious situation to be in, because For myself, I always felt the kids were my boss, and I was able to do unorthodox things later in my teaching career and have this political theater curriculum and really connect with kids over things, concepts like injustice, and discovering political artists like Bob Marley or John Lennon, to be able to share with these kids who came from very different backgrounds, to share with them artists who use their platform to speak up against horrible things in their country and in the world. That was marvelous to watch them recalculate and to think a little bit differently about how, what power and what privilege comes with, having a mic, or being in front of an audience. Right. And having that choice. Explore things that we otherwise maybe wouldn't explore, social issues, political issues. Yeah. It's vital to have these discussions.
Yeah, and a good friend of mine, Christine Stevens, she's a well-known drum circle facilitator, and she trained me through UCLA Arts to run drum circles. And without getting into specifics, we can do that another time. She told me a story once where she was in a part of the world where there were two opposing factions and people at war, and someone had brought her in to do some drumming. And she said as soon as they started the drum circle there, they had both sides playing together. And by the end of the event, people from both sides were talking and realizing, there's similarities despite the differences.
Wow, the power of the drum.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. The first drum is the heartbeat, right?
That's right. You just read. Makes me think of, the plantation owners and the colonial entities who, outlawed the drum. Who outlawed the heartbeat,
Actually, this is crazy. The thought just popped into my head. You're talking about Peru. I'm big on the cajon drum. I don't know if you know where the cajon comes from, but it's Peruvian. And what happened is the Africans were taken from Africa. One of the places they were brought over is Peru. They were not allowed to bring their drums to make music. And what they did is they took shipping crates and they invented a drum that was made out of a box that you could change the pitch with by putting a hole in the back.
My God. I did not know that.
Yeah. And then Paco de Lucia, great guitar player, visits Peru. Yes. And he decides, let's put guitar strings in there so they're a little snappier sound.
What?
Yeah. There's actually a great TED Talk animated episode on YouTube. Just look up TED Talk Cajon. And it just tells the beautiful story of kind of everything we're talking about, all these people that are in impossible situations, just using their creativity to make something beautiful.
Absolutely. I mean, this... Wow. I mean,
we got to talk more.
Yeah, we got to talk more.
This might turn into a monthly thing, just you and me.
Right. Hey, you never know.
Well, listen, I have so many more questions for you. We definitely have to do a part 2, but I always end with a quote. And I know you love this author as much as I do. Buddhist female monk named Pema Chodron.
Yes.
So give me your reaction to this quote. Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It is a relationship between equals. Only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. I got to say, that's freaking me out because I put that quote down maybe a month ago, and I had no idea we would go there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
The heavy hits keep coming in the most poetic fashion, don't they?
You want me to read it again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It is a relationship between equals. Only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. You know that I'm a devotee of some of the bodhisattvas, and immediately I think of the one I've connected with the most in my life. And Jizu, that would be the Japanese, or in the Chinese it would be Goyan, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Right.
But they are the bodhisattva of compassion, the bodhisattva who has to descend into hell to save other beings. There's a resonance there.
That's an old story shared by many cultures.
Yes, it is. It's universal, right? It also makes me think of the whole idea of the body, the human body, the collective body.
Right.
And the whole idea of when you're cut, when you're hurt, when something is disrupted within the body, the cells come together like an army immediately to prevent any further damage.
Right.
And this idea of what happens to a child in Yemen, what happens to a child in Palestine, what happens to a child in Mozambique, in Los Angeles happens to me. Ukraine, Russia, it's we're all one organism. And if we understood that, we would come together in a way, to heal. And I believe it's possible.
Me as well.
I really do believe that the expansion of consciousness, the eradication of war and violence and poverty, I really do believe that these things can be transcended. And creativity is one of the ways in which we can do that. There's no external force that's going to bring that into reality. It's something we as individuals have to tap into. And
it's got to start with a creative dialogue. Well,
agreed.
Jonathan, I think that's a perfect place to end this episode with you and me. Thanks for taking time in your journey to pause for a second.
Thank you for having me, Malcolm.
Let's do this again. Love you, brother.
Love you too, brother. Very much.
Since I moved to the desert, I'm really letting go of so much stuff. I would love to just wake up every day and come do this. So that's kind of my dream, and let go of all.
It's going to happen, man. It's going to happen.
I don't want to run the race anymore. It's...
Wow. That's huge. Congratulations for exiting the matrix in your own personal creative way.